Hello, everybody. I thank TV Chosen for inviting me here to the forum. It's an honor to be here. I think I will briefly talk about creativity and innovation and where that actually stems from. I think where we can actually shape, let's say, our future landscape. First thing I'll mention is that design now is the only really great brand differentiator. In fact, design at this point in time is for every company, large, small, regardless of the size, it is the way really to shape a differentiated brand. In other words, that without design, you really can't compete in the marketplace, regardless of what you're doing. So for me, the kind of notion of innovation and the notion of design is about shaping, let's say, our commodity landscape. The one thing I think that's very important in design is that we always say, well, where does creativity come from? Or how do we generate creativity? Or how do we innovate? Well, creativity is not just one of those phenomena that happens that some people are creative, some people are not creative. If we're very rigorous about creativity, we realize that every one of us, let's say even genetically, are programmed to create. My kind of philosophy about life is that we're only here for two reasons. We procreate or we intellectually create. And so the ideal thing to do is that for obviously procreation is that we're evolving humanity, but for intellectual creation, it's progress. And if we think about the kind of industry and how we kind of shape human culture, I think the first place that I look at to really kind of shape the world and to do the things that I do, and I think that really design has this kind of impact, is that design is really about human experience. And I think this is sometimes something we forget about. We tend to think that design is a notion of style. But style really has very, very little to do with the world in which we live now. In fact, style, just to define it, is about history. And the way we put closure on certain movements in history is through styles. So for example, Baroque style, or Rococo style, or Modernist style, or Minimalist style, these are all periods that have passed that are really not part, let's say, of the social milieu of the time in which we live. The time we live in now, there is no style. Because when this time is over, it will become or be considered a certain style, and it will be put into history and controlled that way. So let's talk about human experience now. If we look at the world we live in today, there's obviously 5 factors that we can really use to shape creativity. Number 1 is how the human being lives and navigates in the world we live in now. In other words, how does a person move from A to B? What kind of space do they have? What kind of social behaviors do they have? And we live, for example, in the age of casualism, what I call the casual age. An example of a casual age is 50% of the world's shoe market is the running shoe. That's a prime example of the casual age. The casual age is also the idea that you may work from home. The casual age is the fact that you, let's say, don't necessarily really wear a uniform anymore, that you dress or behave or be who you want to be in this world. The casual age is about this notion of the dissemination of your creativity, the fact that you can have Facebook or LiveJournal or any of these, Instagram, any way that you can kind of communicate to the world and disseminate to the world your vision of the world and your kind of creative input in the world. The second is that we are living in a world where our technology is affording everybody tools to be creative. So in other words, it's democratized creativity. Technology has democratized every one of us to participate creatively. And this is a very interesting and new phenomena, really. The other thing that technology has afforded every one of us to do is to actually participate globally in the world. So creativity, you could argue, is no more a kind of localized idea or localized condition. It's a global condition. Just like every company I've worked for, so small, so large, regardless of the size, are interested in the global marketplace or are competitive globally. They don't even think locally or regionally anymore. Where's the next kind of level of that is, if we look at the world today, is we look at technology in a sense of production. the kind of production methods and the kind of, let's say, production processes that can kind of inspire new product, new space, new consumer behaviors. And I think technology is the greatest kind of, in a sense, greatest inspiring opportunity to do new things. If we look historically at design, the history of design, and in fact, we even look at historically at the history of all the physical commodity we ever produced, we will see that technology played a major role in it. For example, in the 14th century, a loom created plaid, the fabric plaid. If we look at the chair, let's say Marcel Brauer or Mark Stamm or even Le Corbusier did, using a bent tube. The bent tube was a technology from East Berlin of a company that was making bicycles, and they appropriated that technology to make the chair. So technology itself has always been the catalyst for change, for innovation, and for creativity. Every artist that really was kind of prolific or profound in the world historically, you will see, embraced technology. Warhol embraced all kinds of technologies to kind of shape and change the world. And it goes on and on and on. David Hockney with the Polaroid. You could go to a huge list of artists who all took technology as an inspiration. So the first thing is we have social human behaviors. Second is that we obviously have technology that affords creativity. I think the third part of creativity, which is a kind of key is to be perceptive of the time in which we live. We tend to forget that creativity is not about isolation or sitting in a room and thinking about ideas and just trying to somehow have a position in this world or a voice in this world. But creativity is very much inspired by being a mirror of our social milieu, of the time of life in which we live. And the more perceptive we are about the time we live, the more you see all the opportunities of how to shape the world that we can live in. Now, with that said, remember, design is something that actually is about using contemporary criteria to shape the future. In other words, for example, artists don't see the future. They see the present. It's just everybody else sees the past. So what we need to do as creative people, creative businesses, creative brands, is to be so perceptive of the present that when we start working with the criteria of the present, we in turn will shape the future. And the reason I say that is because if I sit down to work on a project right now, that project may reach the market 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and in turn it may be on the market for the next 10, 15 years. And if it's on the market for the next 10 or 15 years, I'm starting to shape social and human behavior. Fourth point of creativity is a notion of understanding the new world we live in now. And I think the new world we live in now is by no means any more local, regional, or national. It is only global, meaning that the differentiations of cultures are disappearing. And the design has been a tool that's homogenized the world. For good or for bad, that's the reality. Design is that if I make a product that sells 40 million products around the world, I'm really shaping 40 million plus lives. In turn, I'm really shaping a kind of global marketplace. So that's a big change, I think, has taken place. So with that said, the other part that we could think about in a sense of really kind of innovation is the fact that we live in the digital age. And if we're going to create physical commodity in the digital age, then the physical commodity has to compete with the digital age. And this, for me, I find the most inspiring part, is to say, well, what is the digital age today? Well, the digital age is that every one of us have amazing tools of communication. The digital age is fourth dimensional, because what happens is we are working in virtual space. So in turn, we're working in dimensions that are ad infinitum, that kind of go on forever. So the opportunities that are happening in the digital world, and hence why when we look at the global economies, if we look at the recovery of America, for example, the recovery of America is because of the information age, because of Google and Yahoo and everything else that the United States has actually managed to do in the information age, replace this notion of commodity. In other words, the United States has right now less unemployment than it did 30 years ago, but it produces 75% less commodity than it did 30 years ago.